Mom, I Am Always With You. Written by Christina Torry. Narrated by Jessica Caruso. Chapter 1. I was hoping that after having my 2 daughters, I would have a son. When my youngest daughter was 10 months old, I began to feel sick and sensed I might be pregnant. The symptoms were different than my previous pregnancies. I made an appointment with my gynecologist, who also delivered my 2 daughters. The morning sickness I was having was lasting for several hours per day. It was time for my doctor's appointment, and as I waited on the test results, I told the nurse that the morning sickness was intense with this pregnancy, and she said that the doctor would give me a prescription to help with the nausea. The test confirmed that I was indeed pregnant. Because of gynecological problems I had been experiencing, my doctor said that he would need to do a cervical biopsy. While I was praying for my unborn child one afternoon, I heard God say to me that I would have a son, and I was to name him Jacob, and I started crying for joy because it was my heart's desire to have a son. The phone rang, and it was the doctor's office telling me that they had received the biopsy report. The receptionist asked if I could come in the next day for an appointment to discuss the results with my doctor. I felt that I wasn't going to be hearing a good report. As I sat down in one of the examination rooms, he told me that I was in the beginning stages of cervical cancer and that he would have to monitor me closely since this was now a high-risk pregnancy. Throughout each trimester, the cancer did not advance to the next stage. I shared with one of my friends what the Lord had revealed to me, that I would have a son, and what I was to name him. She asked if I planned to have an ultrasound to confirm that I was for sure going to have a son. I replied, there isn't any reason for me to do this. I trust God. If I had not become pregnant at this time, the cervical cancer may not have been detected early enough. It was time for me to give birth to my son. I had 2 previous cesarean sections with my daughters. While my son Jacob was born, I asked my doctor if he could stay in his incubator in my hospital room instead of the prenatal nursery. He agreed. Even as a newborn, I felt that I needed to keep my son close to me. Several weeks later, I had the laser surgery procedure which removed all of the cervical cancer. The church that we attended offered parents the opportunity to participate in their babies' or children's dedication unto God. This wasn't the same as the water baptism that believers in Christ do once. They understand the meaning and the importance of this. Baptism is a symbolic act whereby a new Christian identifies with Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. The day of Jacob's dedication, while I was holding him in my arms at the altar and in front of my church, I heard God whisper to me, "One day, you will give your son back to me." I thought about these words often. When Jacob was 3 months old, a Christian musical production was coming to visit our church. The director of the musical asked our pastor if he knew of a newborn baby boy that they could use to be in this production, and he told him about Jacob. When the church called me to ask if my son could play a part in this musical, I happily agreed. The night of the production, I handed Jacob to a cast member backstage and would be watching my son like a hawk from there. I was honored that they had chosen my son for this. As I was watching the musical, I realized the story was about Abraham and his son Isaac. When the cast member who played the part of Abraham held Jacob above his head, the words came back to my remembrance what God had spoken to me at the altar of his baby dedication. God was asking Abraham, as a test of his obedience, to sacrifice his promised child. Again, I knew that the Lord was speaking something to me through this story, and I would hopefully understand one day. I was active in my church and served in various ministries. I would often bring my children along with me to a weekly Bible study. The teacher of this group asked the question, "What if your child had to give their life for the sake of the gospel, and what if they were chosen to
Sample complete. Ready to continue?